Hey VC, how's it going? Right, okay, a very quick video, something a little bit different. I'm going to show 4 Dusty Springfield albums. Now, between 1969 and 1973, I think she made a really nice little run of records. So say 4 LPs, all of them quite different. And I think a couple of them really quite underappreciated. So I'm going to show each of those records and perhaps do a little drop from a track from each. So starting off with this one. Now, even if you're not a Dusty Springfield fan, the chances are you'll either know this record or know of it. This is Dusty in Memphis. So this came out on Atlantic Records. Now, up to this point, she'd always been signed to Philips, both in the UK and the US. But when her deal came to an end, I think about 68, although she re-signed with Philips in the UK, she went to Atlantic Records in the US. She felt that Philips hadn't really promoted her well enough. She thought they should have done better. And what she liked about Atlantic Records were some of the artists that were already signed to that label, the likes of Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin, of course. So this album, obviously recorded in Muscle Shoals in Memphis, produced by Jerry Wexler, Arif Mardin and Tom Dowd. And for me, this is the ultimate blue-eyed soul record. Now, that's a tag that Dusty didn't like. She didn't like being pigeonholed as blue-eyed soul, but it's undoubtedly soulful. I mean, she doesn't try and sound black at any point. You'd never mistake her for being a black artist. But this album is full of so much soul. I mean, the song choices are just perfect. And it's interesting that the recording process was very different to what she was used to. Normally, she would have turned up at a session. All of the musicians would have had their sheets written out with the music they're going to record. You know, whether that be the band or the orchestra. The instrumental track would be laid down and then she put down a vocal afterwards. When she got to Muscle Shoals, although the song choice has already been made, the arrangements weren't there. The band just basically jammed with Dusty, building the arrangements around her vocal style, her delivery, which I think initially was something she really liked. The issue came when she actually came to record her vocals. This was always the case with Dusty. She was full of self-doubt, lacking in confidence, but I suppose a perfectionist. So she was never comfortable with the vocals that she recorded. Now, I remember first hearing this album probably in the mid-90s. I'd read a lot about it. I knew it was a Southern Soul record. And I was quite surprised when I heard it because as well as those tracks that have a little bit of swagger about them, there's also ballads on here such as The Wimbles of Your Mind, In the Land of Make-Believe, which, yeah, I wasn't sure about to begin with. But as I've got older, those are the tracks that I go back to more. The sort of more subtle tracks on the album, but the whole thing is beautiful. If you don't know it, I can't recommend this enough. Dusty in Memphis, Jerry Wexler wanted to make another album with Dusty, but she felt the right thing to do was to change it up again, to work with another producer. So Atlantic Records paired her up with Gamble and Huff for this album. This is From Dusty with Love. In the States, it was called A Brand New Me, and I think the title track from that record is quite a big hit in the States as well. But yeah, it's interesting that she should work with Gamble and Huff, because this came out in 1970. Just a couple of years later, through their Philly International label and their productions for that label, for artists such as the OJs, Teddy Pendergrass, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, the 3 Degrees, Billy Paul, you know, their soul sound, their style of soul pretty much defined soul music throughout the decade. And here was Dusty working with them in 1970, right at the start of the decade. For me though, this has got more, the sound of it has got more of a foot in the 60s than it has the 70s. It's more of a straight ahead 60s soul record, that's the way I hear it. But yeah, a really nice record and quite a nice companion piece to Dusty in Memphis. And also in 1970, this album was released. This is See All Her Faces. Now, this came out on Philips in the UK. It didn't get a US release. Now, it's interesting, I was reading a review of this the other day, which basically was saying that all of the material is strong, but the songs are best listened to on their own rather than an album. And the reason for that is it's basically an album cobbled together of various tracks from different sessions. So for example, you've got 3 or 4 tracks on here from the Dusty in Memphis sessions produced by Jerry Wexler, Tom Dowd and Arif Mardin, including William Laura Mae Jones, which I think was a single in the States around the time of Dusty in Memphis. But also several tracks on here produced by, well, co-produced by Dusty and Johnny Franz. Now, Johnny Franz was a producer at Philips Records, and he was the guy that produced all those big hits for in the mid-60s. So she obviously had a strong relationship with Johnny Franz. And I think what this does show is that when she moved away to the US, she moved to LA not long after this album came out. She lost a lot by moving away from the UK, because she lost that relationship with Johnny Franz. He seemed to understand her voice, understand her as an artist, and got the best from her. And I think the best tracks on this album are the Johnny Franz productions.
Gonna let you go, my angel. Oh, I can make it stay. I can use my blind self-pity, throw it in the way. But the times have turned between us, and you know I don't believe that it makes one bit of difference if you stay or if you leave. Why can't I be lonely like that lonely rushing river, pushing down mountain on its way to lead the sea? Why can't I need somebody like that river needs the ocean? Why did you have to get so messed up, baby, with a mixed up girl? With a mixed up girl like me. Gonna make it sure now, angel, though I can make it
The
long.
last album I'm going to show is this. This is Cameo from 1973. Now, it took me years to buy this record, purely because the album cover is just so bad. Now, I understand reading about it now, it was originally designed to be done in felt, which I suppose makes a little bit more sense. But, you know, just being produced like this in card, it looks incredibly cheap and tacky. Now, this is a bit of a missed opportunity for me, because she left Atlantic Records and signed with ABC, and that's where this album was recorded. Now, apparently she wasn't in a good place at the time. She was suffering from alcohol addiction. So, all in all, I think she's quite difficult to work with at this point. Saying that though, the album is good. It's very much of its time, but in a good way. There's some strong ballads on here. They're working with some really good songwriters like Vashon and Simpson. Obviously one of the main songwriting teams at Motown Records. But also there's a lovely cover on here of Tupelo Honey by Van Morrison. I say it's very much of its time. There's lots of wah-wah guitar. It's quite funky in places. But as I say, I think this is a really nice record, and one clearly that is often overlooked. So there you go. That's 4 from Dusty. Cheers.
You can take all the tea in China, put it in a big brown bag for me, sail right round the 7 oceans, drive it straight into deep blue sea. He's the sweetest Tupelo honey. He's an angel of the first degree. He's the sweetest